Hi everyone, I have rebuilt my author website, emmarosenbooks.co.uk. Link below if you want to check it out. Basically, my plan had expired and I was interested in trying a different platform for my website and had heard really good things about Shopify, so I had a go with Shopify, rebuilt my website and relaunched, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. This is the third time that I've rebuilt my website, moving from one platform to the other, and it just seemed like a really good time to share some information on how to build a website. If this is your first time going about doing that, or you're thinking about changing things up and you want to see if there's some bits and pieces that you were unaware of. So I thought in today's video I could talk about all of the things that you need to know, the sort of planning and research stage. So talking about content, how you're going to lay out your website, function, domains, platforms, all of that stuff. And then in a future video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of how to set up a website using Shopify, because I am really happy with how my website turned out with them. Incidentally, if you're interested in checking them out, there is a link below. It's an affiliate link, so at no extra cost to you, I earn a small commission, very gratefully, for any sign-ups using that link. So anyway, as I said, today's video is very much about planning and information gathering. And as I say, I've rebuilt my author website 3 times, but I've also set up websites for other organizations. So I've gone about this in different ways. So I really hope that some of the tips that I share with you today are going to be useful. Now, the first place to start when you're building a website is research, thinking about what it is that you might like your website to be. So for me, that's about looking at websites from loads of different authors. And of course, you can start by having a Google of authors that you've heard of. You can check out my website if you'd like to. But I think a useful way to go about this is go onto some Facebook groups for authors. Just ask people to drop their links. People generally are happy to share information and to help other authors out. So if you ask, you're bound to get a whole load of websites to have a look at. And I think although it's useful to look at authors within your own genre and a similar sort of size author and who's offering a similar kind of collection of services, nonetheless, it's also good to get an idea of more broadly what's going on. So have a look at different genres, different sizes of authors, authors who are more experienced, less experienced, traditionally published, self-published, hybrid authors. Just really take a good look at the websites of lots of different people, because they're all going to be offering ever so slightly different things, laying it out differently. You might happen across a website that really is the kind of thing that you have in mind, and you can take inspiration from that or a series of websites. And while you're doing this, it can be really helpful to take a whole load of notes. What I would be doing is writing down what I like, what I don't like, starting to think about how my site is navigated. So, it might be that you want a website that's very simple and is all on one page and just you sort of scroll down. And maybe really all it is a landing page that sends people off to social media, third-party sellers, and so on. Or you might want something far more comprehensive where you're doing direct book sales, so you need e-commerce, perhaps you're offering services, appointments to book those services. There might be a lot going on. So I think that if you take some notes about how that might be laid out and how it might function, those notes will serve as a really good basis when you're then actually designing your website. So essentially, as you're doing this research phase, what I'd be looking for is content. So what do you actually want on your website? Are you going to have a bio? Are you going to have kind of past events that you've done? Are you going to have your background? Like, how much detail are you putting in there? Or is it just going to be quite a basic, this is me, here's my books? And think about the tone and how it's presented. So there's content, there's layout, so how that information is sort of presented, but also the navigation around the website. And then there's function. What functions are on people's websites that you would like to have? So that might be selling books. It might be making appointments. It might be leaving reviews. There's a whole host of things that you could have available on your website. It's going to depend on who you are, what stage in your author career you're at, how you want your business to function, as to which of those things you would like. But through your research phase, hopefully you get a good idea of what you want your website to be and how it can best represent your business. So with all that research done and a real picture in your mind of what it is that you're trying to achieve, it's time to think about the budget that you have available for building this website. And of course, like anything, you can in fact build a website entirely for free, and I will talk about some of those options, all the way up to having something where there's quite a complex package with your platform. So you've got e-commerce and lots of different functions and the ability for different people to access your account, and potentially using a web designer, so all you do is pass on your ideas and somebody else builds it for you. It depends if you have the skills, it depends if you have the time, it depends what it is that you want to achieve with this website. And really what you can do at this point is think, well, I was hoping for a really fancy website, but I don't think that I've got the skills or the budget to do that, and maybe kind of reining that in and rethinking those ideas from the research. Or thinking, actually, I can have everything and I don't really have the time to build this website myself, or any kind of mixture of those things. But when you have an idea of the possibilities and of the budget and of course your skill set and time that you have available, all of those things can go together so that you then can decide how you want to move forward. The next thing to think about then is the domain. So the URL or the web address that somebody types in or follows a link to get to your website. Now, there is a free option. Generally, you can, when you're setting up a website, it will have like a messy web address that's assigned to you by the platform, and you can keep that. It might not bother you. It might be something, it's usually got lots of slashes and dots and is quite a long, messy web address. If that doesn't bother you, that's cool, then that doesn't cost you anything. You also could forward your customers to that by using something like a bit.ly link, a QR code, so that it's easier rather than them typing something in that's complex. Do bear in mind though that if that's the case, once they've got to your website, they'll be able to see, unless you can mask it, in the web address, the more complicated, messy domain. If that doesn't bother you, you want to do it for free, you do have that option. I will say though that domains are not the expensive bit of setting up a website. So I think for a lot of us, it's going to be something that's within budget and that we are willing to pay for, but there is the option if that is something that you would prefer to do things for free. If you are planning to buy your own custom domain, the first thing is to think about what you would like that to be. So is it going to be your name or your name plus author, writer, whatever? Might it be your publishing company? What is it that you would like the words to be? And then find out if that particular domain is available. Seems like a good time to tell you the story of when I bought my domain, emmarosenbooks.co.uk. I wanted emmarosen.co.uk, just my name, but that was unavailable. Now, I had a look and found out who owned that domain. Sometimes that information is available and you can get the contact details of that person. I contacted the person who owned it and said, would you sell it to me? And they were looking at using that domain in the future and said, actually, we'd like to keep hold of it. But it might be an option. If the domain you'd like is not available, potentially whoever owns it might be willing to sell it to you. Hopefully, though, the domain that you're looking for is available. Going back to my story of buying mine, because emmarosen.co.uk wasn't available, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to add a word to that. So I thought, Emma Rosen author or Emma Rosen writer. I really had imposter syndrome about it. This was, I'm pretty sure, before my first book came out. And I was worried in case I only ever brought out that one book, or I don't know, I just felt really uncomfortable about it. And at the time, I was doing a lot more Bookstagram, Booktube, I was doing a lot of book reviews. And so I thought, well, potentially part of my business might still be this kind of bookish reviewing type side of things. So let's just be really simple and just say Emma Rosen Books. And that's what I went with my branding across my social media. All of that came from the fact that that was the domain that was available. In retrospect now, I wish it was Emma Rosen author, and you might see me occasionally using that. Like my website now says Emma Rosen author instead of Emma Rosen Books, because Emma Rosen Books seems a bit clunky and not entirely grammatically correct. Nonetheless, it's what I've been known as on the internet for a number of years. So I'm like that about, I know I could buy a new domain and keep the old one and still forward them together and things and rebrand, but I don't want to do that right now. Maybe I will in the future. So it's worth thinking about how your future self might feel about your domain, and don't let the imposter syndrome get to you. Just think about if that is something that if your career goes really well as an author, are you still going to want that domain that you've chosen? It's a bit like those of us who have really silly email addresses from the 90s. And now we're grown-ups, we maybe wish we'd made different choices. Obviously not to that extreme. So yes, have a think about how you might feel about that domain in years to come, and also really check through how that word, that address could be split up, because none of us want to experience what happened with Pen Island. So do get other people to check your URL and see if they can spell out anything inappropriate or rude, because otherwise you might come to regret it. Now, when you have chosen your domain, you typically sign up for a year or 2 years, 3 years, and you might get a price break for signing up for more years and making a commitment. That's often an option when you're buying things online. At this point, you also might like to think about buying more than one domain. So for example, I own emmarosenbooks.co.uk, but I also own emmarosenbooks.com, just in case someone types the wrong thing in and that URL still directs to the same website. I also own sartainpublishing.co.uk because that's the name of my publishing company, and therefore that directs to the same place as well. It enables me to use that domain in the copyright page in my books or anything like that I want to kind of show that I also own this publishing company. That for me feels comfortable, but you can think about whether you want more than one domain and whether you want more than one suffix on your domain, and you will probably be given the option. So if you're somebody that, like me, I'm in a country where we typically have .co.uk, I would like to have the .com as well, but you can go further than that and buy more suffixes, essentially so that it's easy for people to navigate, but also in case somebody buys other domains maliciously to put things on the internet that people might accidentally stumble across. So it depends how you feel about it and how much you want to protect your website and how much you think it might be helpful for your customers. So decide what address you actually want, what suffixes you want, how many things you're willing or able to pay for, and make your purchases. So then the last piece of the puzzle is thinking about the platform that you want to use to build your website. And there are lots of them. I've already mentioned Shopify, but there's also Squarespace, WordPress, Wix, lots of different options. You can even have a free site using Google Sites. That can be really helpful if you're trying to keep that budget down. And some of the other options have free versions. I know that WordPress has a free option available. Obviously, depending on what you're paying, that's going to impact the functions that your website has. So it's always going to be a weighing up of what it is that you need your website to do alongside your budget. Now, the best thing to do really here is to do some research on the different platforms, find out what plans they have, how much they cost, what functions all of those different things offer. But also you can go back to that original research you did. If there was a website or websites that you really liked, you might be able to contact those authors and say, how did you set up your website? What platform did you use? And then that might help you to know, oh, I can do something similar with that platform. Sometimes even their websites might say powered by Shopify or whatever. It has a little bit at the bottom. So you might even be able to tell how their website was built. So essentially, they all offer different things, and I've used a few different ones, and I have my preferences and the ones that I don't prefer. And as I say, I've moved over to Shopify and I find that really works for me. But another thing you can do is that there generally are quite a lot of people who have set up websites. It may well be that within your friends and family or your work colleagues, there's somebody who has tried to build a website and they might be able to tell you their experience, get their recommendations. If they feel that a particular platform is a bit clunky to use, not very intuitive, tends to have issues or anything like that, that personal experience is always really helpful. So when you've kind of narrowed it down, there is another helpful thing, which is that these platforms typically offer you a free period to try out building your website. So for example, Shopify gave me 3 days to have a go at building my website before I had to pay anything. So gave me a chance to have a go. At this point, you might even be thinking, am I able to do this? And so gives you a chance to see, oh yeah, this is fine. I'm going to be able to do this. Or I really think I need to think about getting a web designer. And of course, if you are going down the web designer route, make sure that you are researching who you're using, go on recommendations, things like that, because you want this person who's having access to all of your website, your information, and all of that person is reliable and good at what they're doing. So over the course of those few days, see whether you are able to build the site and whether it does what it is that you're hoping to do, because it might be that the vision you had really doesn't work with that particular platform. They all have slightly different functions and layouts, and some of them are more intuitive than others. So I think until you try them, you don't necessarily know whether it's going to work for you. And then typically once you've decided what it is that you're going to do, what plan you're going to go for, you pay for a certain period of time. So they often offer monthly, but that's typically more expensive. However, if you'd really like to know how much money you have going out on that regular basis, that might work for you. Or you want the option to stop at any particular time. Or you can tie in for a year, 2 years, 3 years. The one that I've had that just expired was a 3-year sign up because I got a really good deal for committing for 3 years. The downside of that, of course, is that if you do want to move away, and I've been thinking about it for about a year, you need to wait or you're going to lose money. So again, it's a point to think about whether you need those regular payments or whether you'd prefer the lower cost, whether you are willing to sign up for a longer period of time. So at this point, I mean, you might have even started building your website as you're giving it a try, but this is when you really start designing your site. And as I said, in a future video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of how to do that specifically on Shopify. If you're using a different platform, there are going to be a whole bunch of tutorials on YouTube that you'll be able to find to show you how to do different things. And personally, I find when there's a stumbling block, something isn't working, or I don't know how to do something, I can always find some kind of walkthrough, or I just Google it and there's always someone explaining how they go about doing it. Sometimes it's a little bit complicated if you're looking at inserting code into the website, but that is rare, I have to say. So I do think this is something that's completely achievable for a lot of people. And obviously that helps to keep the cost down because you're not paying for a web designer. So I really think it's worth having a try, see how you get on. And I really hope you manage to build the website that you're looking for. There are so many resources out there. If anyone has anything useful, any tips, tricks, anything like that, please do drop it into the comments to help out other people. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.